Hi, fifth grade. So you are ready to start pre-writing. You finished poem 2, and now you're ready to get started with poem 3. Um, you'll notice that this video is different from the one in the video lesson slide for poem number 2. And the reason for that is that you are ready for a few more options. You're ready to explore and try new things as a writer, especially in the area of pre-writing. So if you'll remember, the step of pre-writing is where we select our topic, we gather details, we organize those details and ideas that we have before we actually start writing our poem. And so I wanted to go through this process with you because I'm giving you more freedom and more options as a writer. And I'm hoping that having these freedoms or having this freedom and these options will allow you to experiment and find what works best for you, which will result in you growing more as a writer. So, the documents that you use to show me your progress through the writing process can always be found over here in your work. We always start with step 1, pre-writing. What you'll notice, and we know that Google Classroom does this crazy thing when we attach documents, it doesn't organize them in the order that I attach them or by number order. It's just kind of random. So remember from our first lesson that you have to hover over the document to see the full name of the document to know which one you're going to be clicking on. I tried to make it a little bit easier by making sure I use a 1 for any pre-writing documents because it's the first step of the writing process. So what you're going to notice though, as you look over here, is that you have quite a few more options that have a 1 next to them. So you have the sensory details graphic organizer. You have the basic web that you had before. You have a design your own or create your own graphic organizer option. You have a timeline graphic organizer option. And you have a who, what, how, when, and where graphic organizer as well. Now I'm going to go ahead and start clicking and opening these so I can talk to you about each one. But these are your options. So you guys actually have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different graphic organizer options for the step of pre-writing. You won't actually complete all 5 of these. You're just going to choose one and select one. So let's go ahead and get these open, and I'll talk about them after I have them all open in tabs for you guys. Now, keep in mind that when you guys make your decisions, you might want to do what I'm doing here. You might want to take a closer look at the graphic organizers before you make your decision about which one you want to use, because it really just depends on your topic and what you're hoping to accomplish with your poem. So now you can see I have, looks like I maybe even have an extra one, all of my pre-writing documents open. So I'm going to start by talking about this one. This is the one you use for poem number 1 and poem number 2. If this one works for you, it's appropriate for your topic or the experience that you're sharing with your reader, of course you can keep using that. But the idea here with having different options is to try new things and find what works best for you. Not just one that works, but which one works best based on what you're writing about and the kind of details and experience you want to give your reader. So this one, I'm not going to go into detail because you already know. You put your topic in the middle, you add details about that topic in the yellow boxes, and then you become more specific with your details about that detail in the purple boxes. Okay, so next I'm going to talk to you about the sensory details graphic organizer. Looks like I'm going to have to make my face a little smaller. Here we go. Now this one is rather lengthy, but I'm certain that when you take the time to really do a good job of gathering details and planning what you're going to write before you actually start drafting, it usually pays off, and your drafts come together more quickly, and the quality of your poem is usually so much better when you've taken time to do the hard stuff in the beginning. So this is just like a 2-column chart. And over here in this column is a description. And you can see, you can scroll down because it's kind of a long one, with a description of all the different things that you might consider adding to your poem, or what kinds of details you might include in your poem. Of course, we start here with your topic. You would click over here and you would type what from your heart map you're going to be writing this poem about. And then the next box is your theme, your so what, or your why. So this would be the reason you think your heart and mind have held on to this experience or memory, or what you've come to understand as a result of writing about this topic. Sometimes you don't know this when you're pre-writing, so this might be something that you come back to later, or you just skip altogether in the step of pre-writing. Sometimes we do, as writers, know why our heart has held on to it and why we're feeling compelled to write about it. And so if you have an idea about that, by all means, go ahead and type that into this box if you know that. If not, leave it blank until you understand later why you've chosen to write about this, or what writing about this has helped you understand about life or yourself, or the topic that you're writing about. So this was called the Sensory Details Graphic Organizer, so it wouldn't be right if we didn't talk about the senses. So you guys know that sensory details, or sensory language, are details in language that appeal to the 5 senses. So sight, sound, touch, taste, and smell are those senses that make up the 5 senses. And we've read plenty of poems this year where the poet gave us language or imagery on purpose to help invoke those senses, or help us to experience whatever they're describing using our senses. So if we know this is an effective strategy that writers use, then we can do that in our writing as well. So this just walks you through that process. Close your eyes, imagine whatever you're writing about. What do you see, and how can you describe that, what you're experiencing, so your reader can see it too? So this is where you would record all of those details. Then you would do the same thing with sounds. You would close your eyes, picture what you're describing, or your topic, or your experience, and then you would focus on the sounds, and then how are you going to describe that to your readers? So you continue in this fashion for touch, taste, and smell. You do those senses the same way that you did sight and sound. Use my questions and my guidance over here in the left column to help you with this. Now, some of you may not use all 5 senses, depending on what you're talking about. I don't know if you remember this, but when I taught you about the rule of write about a pebble, that student was writing about pebbles, and they hadn't really experienced a pebble. So they went out, got a pebble, and then interacted with it. They described what they saw, they described what they heard, they described how it felt using their sense of touch. The sight, or the senses that they didn't use to interact with the pebble, was taste and smell. So if you find yourself writing about a topic that doesn't involve some of these senses, that's perfectly okay. Just leave the box next to it blank. And then I added a few extra things. You might not be ready to try some of these things just yet, but as you move on and progress through each poem, you might find yourself wanting to push yourself and challenge yourself a little more than you have been. So I have some boxes here that give you opportunities to include some figurative language, or play around with details that you could describe in a figurative way using metaphors, similes, personification, idioms, or hyperboles. Again, if you're not ready for that, just leave that box blank. But if you want to play around with it, if you want to try it out, then it's here, so you can do that as early as pre-writing. Sound devices, these are techniques that writers use. You've heard about these before. So it just kind of talks about, does this apply, to your poem? And so if there are details that you can, details, or maybe you want to play around with something that incorporates some of these sound devices, then you could, again, plan that in the box that corresponds right here. And then the last thing is form. How many stanzas are you planning? How many lines are you planning for each stanza? Can you experiment with how the poem looks on the page? We've seen a little bit of this in some of the poems that we've read in class, like in Speed and 6 minutes, 26 seconds. We know that those poets used a combination of short and choppy lines along with longer ones to kind of mimic the action they were describing in the poem. If you have plans to do that, this would be where you would add those details on your pre-writing graphic organizer. So there is that one. And then I'm going to jump. I'm trying to go quickly so this lesson, or this video lesson, isn't too terribly long. We just talked about that one. So we're ready for this one. This one is create your own graphic organizer to fit your own personal creative process. Add shapes, text boxes, lines, etc. to construct your custom organizer. So this one is all about you, and it's up to you. There are so many different things you can play around with. You can add shapes, you can add symbols. There are arrows, so like if you want to connect ideas, you can use those to do so. There are call outs. There are different symbols you can use also. There are text boxes. You can insert images. If you want to connect things, you can use these lines. Really, the sky is the limit here. And this is one that you might not be ready for right now in poem number 3, but you might be ready for in the future. So poems 4, 5, 6, okay? You might want to try creating your own. That might fit whatever your topic is better than some of the examples that I've given to you or given to you to use. So that's where you would do this here. Again, if you get really good at this, this is how you move from a 3 to a 4. You're so aware of how your brain works when it's creating that you know exactly what you need to build to collect details that will allow you to do that. Okay, that's an advanced skill. And so that if you're able to do this and do it well, then that would get you into the 4 category on our writing workshop scoring guide. So I'm not going to go into a lot more detail with that because I really just want you guys to figure out what works best for you. Of course, if you have questions, feel free to ask me. I'll help you insert boxes and things of that nature. This next one is pretty self-explanatory. If you were writing a poem about an experience or a memory, there might be some kind of a sequence to it. And so you might want to use a timeline to map out what you're writing about. And this just allows you to add details about those events in the order that they happen, just like a timeline does before you start writing. And then this one is the one that uses the question words. So you can see each question word has a different color scheme. So who, if you're answering questions about the who of your topic, that they would be in green. If you're giving setting details, the when and the where of what you're describing in your poem, it would go here. And then the events in the order that they happen would go over here in the purple. Then you also have a cloud for your theme details. And again, like I told you when we discussed the first one that had this, you might not know this in pre-writing. It might be something that comes later. So those are your options for pre-writing. I hope you have fun experimenting with them. After you select which document or graphic organizer you're going to use, I would close out the other ones. I would not go in and delete them because then it's difficult to get them back. I would wait until you are all done and I would just turn them all back in. I'll be able to see which one you used, and the ones that are blank, I'll know that that wasn't your choice. All right, guys, good luck with your new Adventures in Prewriting, and I can't wait to see what you create.